Hi, this is Teddy. You're listening to Adam Cohen on Two Broads Talking Politics.
Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I am on with my co-host Sophie. Hey Sophie.
Hey Kelly.
And today joining us for a bonus episode to talk some about what's going on at the border, we have Adam Cohen, who is on the board of directors for Lawyers for Good Government and also is a managing partner at his law firm Cohen and Siegel. Hi Adam.
Hey, Kelly. Hey, Sophie. How are you?
Good. As good as we can be, I think, when the world seems terrible. But hopefully we can talk some about ways people can help make it slightly less terrible. So could you start by telling us just a little bit about what Lawyers for Good Government is and how you got involved in it?
Like a lot of organizations, we began at the end, so to speak, or ended at the beginning. I'm not sure which. Our founder put a post up on Facebook, believe it or not. She's a lawyer who simply wanted to do something good and expected, maybe she'd get 50, maybe 100 lawyers at most responding. And within a day had 10,000, and within a week had 100,000. And we topped off at about 125,000 lawyers who simply said, we cannot abide what we think is going to happen, and we want to do something. We believe that we have the skills and the training and the ability to do something, so let us see what it is that we can do. And I joined the fray pretty early on, probably the first or second day, and just began giving my point of view and becoming more, I guess, noticeable. And Tracy Fight Love, who was the founder, saw that what I was saying and thought that it aligned with what she saw as the vision for the organization, and asked me to take on a leadership role, which I willingly did. I've got to say, it was really shocking to me because I'm dealing with a lot of Harvard and Yale trained lawyers who have high profile jobs, and I am anything but that. I went to Cardozo Law School. Certainly I'm proud of my legal education, but I have a small law firm, and of all things, I focus on workers' compensation and Social Security disability law, and not constitutional issues or immigration by any stretch of the imagination, or even criminal law. So the fact that anybody was interested really in what I had to say was, and still is to this day, shocking to me. But regardless, we formed. We didn't quite know what to do until the Muslim ban kind of crystallized us, and Lawyers for Good Government lawyers, along with countless lawyers from other groups, just started going to the airports, I should say, across the country. We organized, we helped form a national coalition of groups to share information, tell each other, what are you seeing here? What is Customs and Border Patrol doing there? What policies are they following? And of course, each had its own nuance. But I guess one of our core principles was born out of that awful Muslim ban period of time. And immigration became one of our key focuses. I spent about a week at JFK myself. I should say about a part of every day for a week, just trying to help wherever a lawyer that was not trained in this area could help. Trying to bring resources, trying to help share information, trying to answer needs of other lawyers that were skilled in these areas. And since then, we've developed programs that address climate change. We've been working with the Sierra Club and Bloomberg Philanthropies on that. And in fact, I think it was the Sierra Club that called our climate change program, which involves, I believe, about 150 to 200 lawyers. Sierra Club called that a game-changing program, wherein we're trying to help municipalities and local groups change to renewable energy and really sort of fulfill the ideas of the Paris Accord, even though the president has pulled us out of it. We're also trying to formulate or reformulate our program dealing with election protection by taking a look at seeing what each local election board across the country is doing, which is really kind of a mammoth task because there are so many localities and so many different places to cover. But we want to see if there's any kind of an issue that really needs to be addressed because it's discriminatory and depriving voters of their sacred right to vote. But I think we're probably at this point best known for Project Corazon, which is our border project, where we have been sending attorneys to the southern border for over a year and also been participating in, had other attorneys participating in remote proceedings for credible fear interviews and remote bond hearings. And the idea is obviously to see if we can get past the first hurdle for a claim for asylum. And if immigrants are going to be held in detention, at least see if we could get a court to offer them the opportunity to post a bond so that they could be freed from detention. Fortunately, the government is letting us do that remotely. So, it's very hard to have attorneys travel down to the border to do one of these hearings.
So can we talk some about sort of what the situation at the border is? So I think a lot of people who are sort of half following the story, obviously we know there's something going on. We know there are people being held in poor conditions, but I think a lot of people don't sort of have a very good sense of what the situation normally looks like, if there is such a thing as normal, what's happening now, what's different. Could you sort of talk a little bit about, what exactly is happening? What happens when people cross the border and how do they end up in facilities?
Again, I'm going to give it a little bit of a qualifier here because this is not my expertise, even though as a sort of layperson attorney, I've got a little bit more familiarity because I have been extremely active with promoting and assisting Project Corazon. But previously, people tried to enter mostly through legal ports of entry. And if they could not, they tried to cross the border unlawfully. And really, from 2000 through most of the years when Obama was president, my understanding is that you didn't have families attempting those unlawful crossings. It was really migrants that were looking for work, individual adult men. And generally, even if you do cross not at a port of entry, that's considered to be a misdemeanor, and that is not something for which you would generally be held in detention for months and months, which is where the awfully named term catch and release came from. Or if you do cross and you immediately turn yourself in and claim asylum, whether the claim is valid or not, that is your right to do. Unfortunately, there seems to be a lot of misinformation that if you do cross unlawfully, then you should be locked up in a detention center. So you didn't really have this number of people. And that's the other thing. The amount of people that have been crossing has certainly increased. And you can put the blame on that upon whoever you wish. I couldn't tell you, whether that's just simply ebb and flow, or it is the result of draconian policies issued by the president, although there does seem to be cause and effect there. The numbers have certainly increased, and now we've got families coming rather than unaccompanied adult men. And we're having the families being kept for months and months at a time in detention, and as we've seen through the news reports, in utterly deplorable and horrifying conditions. I mean, you've got children, toddlers, 1 year old, 2 years old, even younger, that are being kept in some facilities. This is not all facilities, but it is some facilities, and this has been well documented, that are not being cared for by adults, but they're being cared for by children that are 7, 8, 10. They don't have diapers. They can't even wash the children because they don't have soap. They don't have toothpaste and toothbrushes. These are basic necessities and just things that you would, under common decency, want to have for children, that for some reason, even though it costs upwards of $700, $750 a day per child, that these facilities do not have for these children. It's really both unconscionable and unfathomable that this is happening. And it's more and more each day. The last time I checked, it was some 50 to 52,000 immigrants that were being kept in detention, and I think some 6,000 or more children that were being kept in detention, and still, according to reports, being separated from their parents. It's unbelievable to say, but that is still happening. And what's even worse, this is being denied by members of Congress, and there was I believe it was a CBP official that testified within the past couple of days in a congressional hearing that the reports that we've seen, which have been from lawyers, because the press, of course, is not allowed into these facilities, and nobody is allowed to take photos or video of what's going on. So the only people that are allowed, pursuant to a negotiated settlement of a Supreme Court case, that would be the Flores case, if you've heard of it. The site escapes me for the moment. So the only people that are able to see these children are lawyers under this settlement of this case. They are reporting the conditions to the media. The media is reporting it. And CBP now says the lawyers are lying because they have an interest in the case. I mean, if we lie, and we lie in sworn pleadings or we lie to the court, we can lose our license to practice law. It's that simple. It is not something that you do, not to mention what other either civil or perhaps even criminal charges can be brought against you for lying, especially if you lie in a sworn statement of any kind. It's perjury. I mean, it's cut and dry. So what's going on, by all reliable accounts, is something that none of us really thought would happen in this country after World War II and the Japanese internment. Yet here we are.
How is this legal? I don't know how to phrase this, but like, I have a 3-year-old, and if I kept my 3-year-old in conditions like this, I would be reported to CPS, and probably my 3-year-old would be placed in a foster home while they investigated. So how is it legal for the government to do this? Is it legal for the government to do this to children?
That's a very good question. And under the Flores settlement, children aren't supposed to be held for more than 20 days. So you can start there. Children that have been held for months violate that settlement, whether that would be considered a criminal violation or a civil violation, that I don't know. And of course, the difference would affect what the ramifications would be. In other words, if it's criminal, somebody could go to jail. If it's civil, then it's really highly unlikely or improbable, although it's possible if the violation were egregious enough that a court could say, you are in contempt of court, and I'm going to put you in jail until this is remedied. But that is a very extreme response from a court. So it's very difficult to find illegality, especially since the government acts, I should say, under the cloak of immunity in many cases from criminal prosecution. In other words, it's sort of presumed that their actions are taken in good faith and under the law, and if there is some sort of a mistake that their actions were not, then they are generally immune from prosecution. I mean, you take everything that's happened and you look at it and your jaw hits the floor when you read about some of this stuff, as does mine. And you wonder, how could this possibly be and how can they get away with this? But on the other hand, when you look at some of the other things that this administration is doing, such as refusing flatly to comply with congressional subpoenas and making what seems to be a ludicrous claim that anybody that worked as an advisor in the White House has immunity and is not subject to congressional oversight. And you just, especially if you're a lawyer, you take a look at this and you say, how can they possibly get away with this? And then you remember the fragility under which our system works, right? I mean, you think back to, Brown versus Board of Education. Well, Eisenhower was president when that occurred, when that court decision was issued. And what would have happened if Eisenhower had simply said, you know what, I'm not going to follow this law. I'm not going to abide by this Supreme Court decision because I don't believe in it. And you start to understand that our system really only works if everybody abides by the rules. And that certainly isn't happening here. I don't know what the fallout is ultimately going to be. I hope we find out soon, if not by 2020 at the latest. But it is really frightening. I can't tell you how many times I felt that we're on the edge of a constitutional precipice and our country is really staring down the barrel of dissolution or another, not necessarily another civil war. I don't want to sound alarmist because that's really not generally my viewpoint, but it is extremely frightening. Going back to when I was in JFK during the Muslim ban, I was there the night that Trump fired Sally Yates, who was the acting attorney general, and then I can't remember whether he fired the director of ICE or that person resigned. And I think that there was another either resignation or firing that same evening. And here we are a week or two into Trump's administration, and I'm wondering if it's going to collapse that quickly. So, and again, I recognize that sounds, almost ludicrous for me to say, but when you've got these kind of policies that are completely antithetical to our national ethos being implemented with such swiftness and such severity, it gives you great pause and makes you wonder what is going to happen next.
We probably can't solve all of that. But what I would like then to focus in on a little bit is how people who are listening can help your group, can help Project Corazon, with the things that we can do. So some of this, of course, is going to involve a really big lawsuit. Some of this is going to involve regime change, right? We need a new president. We need a new administration. But how can we help individuals right now who are in these terrible circumstances?
Sure. And I always hesitate to say this because it's not what I wanted to hear. I go back, of course, everybody remembers where they were at 9/11 and the aftermath. If you were alive and old enough to remember that, right? And if you remember, what did they tell us? I live in Westchester County, which is immediately north of New York City. I, of course, every day went to work, grabbing my work clothes, my boots and my work clothes. I'm a lawyer. My gardening outfit, and wanted to go down and help, but of course we couldn't. And what all of us were told pretty much across the country was, well, really donate to the Red Cross, donate to whatever organization you think is appropriate to help. And that always frustrated me. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so active in Lawyers for Good Government. But ironically, that's the first thing that I would tell people to do. Because we all want to rush down to the border. We all want to help. We all want to grab and hug these kids and volunteer to be foster parents for them, volunteer to give them a place. And we want to send supplies, and we want to send diapers, for God's sake. They don't give diapers to the children. I don't understand that. But that's not what organizations at the border are looking for. They're looking for money. They are looking for people to volunteer remotely at times. And Annunciation House and Raices are good organizations to volunteer to. Raices, you may be able to volunteer for remotely, or if you can get down to the border, but you really need to contact them to see what the opportunities are. Al Otro Lado is also, and I know I am really butchering that. My Spanish is as bad as my knowledge of immigration law, I think. But that is another organization that might offer volunteer opportunities, as actually Lawyers for Good Government does. And if you are an immigration lawyer, or you can travel with an immigration lawyer, we may be able to help you travel to the border to help some of these organizations and some immigrants with their credible fear interviews. If you are bilingual or can work with somebody that is bilingual, as we do in my office, we can have you do intake interviews with detained asylum seekers by telephone, remotely. Lawyers at large firms can have their pro bono coordinators work with us. There are other opportunities as well. If you don't have money to donate, I understand. If you have, say, frequent flyer miles, that we will happily take, because that can help us get more people down to the border. And if I can give our web address, I would love to do that.
Yes, please do.
lawyersforgoodgovernment.org, and I'll spell that LAWYERSFORGOVERNMENT.org. But any help that you can give, anything that you can do, this is something that we volunteer for because it's a passion. Because the Constitution is important to us, because the law is important to us, but most importantly, because the human beings have value, and we recognize that value, and we cannot abide what is happening to them and what is being done to them for whatever reasons I could not possibly justify, and so unnecessary. I shake my head in just my inability to understand. As you can say, I'm clearly rendered a little speechless by what I see happening. This is not who we are, and if it is, then we need to change it, and we need to change it immediately. We've seen this play out in countries all across the world. We see the plight of refugees, and this being America, which is supposed to be the most welcoming country for immigrants on the planet, to have us doing this, to have our president saying the country is closed, to have immigrants apply for points of entry, apply for asylum at ports of entry, and being told, well, I'm sorry, we can't see you today. And they have, when they have really choked off the amount of people that are allowed to apply for asylum at a port of entry to a trickle, and have them in desperation trying to cross the Rio Grande, and have them wind up face down, drowned to death. I don't understand how we can let that happen in a country with such wealth and prosperity. I don't really know what else I can say.
Are there particular news services or Twitter feeds that you would recommend that people follow for really good, up-to-date information?
Well, absolutely. You can certainly follow mine, which is Accidental Liberal. That's a pretty good one. I would say that Rachel McGonigal's is an excellent feed. Rachel has been posting a list, and she's well over 50 for places that you can donate to, or organizations that are helping at the border. Ricardo de Anda and Hassan Ahmed are also excellent, as is Democracy Storm. Adam Rifkin, I find Karma, is also a wonderful feed. As far as news services and reporters, Jacob Soboroff with MSNBC has been excellent on this, as has the Texas Tribune. They have been just a wonderful source. They're right there, so it makes sense. And Brooke Binkowski has been very good, as she happens to be a friend. So I would certainly follow them as well. TexasTribune.org is so those are some of the ones that I follow on a regular basis. They're really, thankfully, there have been a lot of reporters that have been on top of this story and that stay on top of this story. Unfortunately, there's a story that they need to stay on top of.
Adam, was there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talked about?
I just hope that we can separate the politics, which I understand is hard to do, that we can separate the facts here from the truth. The truth is that whether we like it or not, this is happening. And children are getting sick, and they are being kept in terrible, terrible conditions. And they are, unfortunately, in some cases, dying as a result of this. It doesn't need to happen. We can fix this, and we have to fix this. We are just breeding a lost generation of children for no purpose. And hopefully we will be able to rescue, I guess is the best term I can use for these children. Hopefully we will be able to reunite them with their families. And hopefully people will find it in their hearts to contribute to our organization and to these other organizations that are doing just wonderful yeoman's work to help resolve this problem. It is a humanitarian crisis. Again, you can debate who caused it. At some point, I don't care as long as we fix it, and then we can argue about who started it. But while we bicker, children are suffering, and that's not right. We've got to make it better.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for all the work that you've been doing and for really staying on this story. There's this hashtag Don't Look Away, and I think it is so tempting sometimes to look away because it's so horrifying and it's so hard to hear about and to read about. But I thank you and the other people who are doing this work and not looking away, not removing ourselves from the situation.
No, thank you for having me on and giving me the opportunity. I probably droned on for far too long. I'm a lawyer. You give me an opportunity and try to shut me off. I will say you can look out for the hashtag Project Corazon because when I tweet about this stuff, and I'm on Facebook as well, but really mainly on Twitter at this point, I will use that hashtag. And I will probably be tweeting a long thread of firsthand accounts of people that went to the border through Project Corazon. I've done that in the past. I've gotten some more reporting back from people, and I am going to be issuing, I am sure, a thread within the next day or two. So I can't say that that's something that you should really look for with bated breath, because it's certainly not the topic that you really want to see, but don't look away.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Adam. And we will put links up to those Twitter accounts and also to places where people can donate on our website. So I hope that people will check that out.
Thank you very much, Kelly, Sophy. Thank you guys for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast.